Alhamdulillahi wahdah wassalatu wassalam ala man la nabiyya ba'dah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Dear viewers, welcome to another episode of Islam in Brief. Today we will talk about a verse from Surah Al-Isra, which is the 17th chapter of the glorious Quran. In verse 36, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. That is, do not follow that, do not pursue that of which you have no knowledge. إِنَّ السَّمَعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادِ. Indeed, the hearing, the vision, and the heart or the intellect, كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. Each of these will be questioned, that is on the day of judgment. Brothers and sisters, like many other verses of the glorious Quran, this verse emphasizes the importance of knowledge and information. Before a person makes a statement or he adopts a deed as righteous or as good. So if we check the classical commentators of the glorious Quran, like Imam Tabari, Imam Qurtubi, Ibn Kasir, Imam Al-Baghawi and many others, with regard to the first part of this verse, that وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ, that is, do not follow that of which you have no knowledge, they say that it means that you should not say something of which you have no knowledge. وَلَا تَقُلْ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. Or you should not make an allegation particularly on a chaste person without sufficient proof and sufficient evidence. Or you should not give false witness. Or you should not follow that of which you have no knowledge. Or you should not believe in speculations and conjectures. These are the various statements recorded by these Mufassirun with regard to the first part of the verse. The second part of the verse, wherein it is said that your hearing, your vision, and then your heart or intellect will be asked on the day of judgment, they say two things about that. The first thing is that these individual organs will be asked on the day of judgment by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will be questioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. What were the deeds they performed or they contributed to? The second thing these commentators mention with regard to the second part of this verse is that a human being on the day of judgment will be asked, he will be questioned with regard to his use of these endowments, these resources which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to him. Today I will try to emphasize 5 important dimensions of this verse, 5 important lessons that we derive from this verse, 5 important applications this verse has on we people in modern times, or the way we should be careful about with regard to these 5 things in the context of this verse, which demands that you need to have knowledge, you need to have understanding before you step forward for a statement or an action. The first thing is that when we form opinions about people, when we make statements about people or issues, it should be after acquisition of sound understanding and knowledge about those persons or those issues. It should not be the case with we Muslims that we make opinions and statements with regard to different people or different issues without acquiring knowledge about those persons or those issues. Brothers and sisters, you might be aware about the fact that earlier we thought that wearing a pant shirt it wasn't allowed, or some would consider it to be haram. Or wearing a necktie, it would be considered haram by many people. Or using the public address system, using loudspeakers, it would be considered bad, or it would be considered haram by or unwelcome in Islam by many scholars. Or when the television came on a mass level, it was sort of adopted by people, it became common in society. Many people thought, religious people thought, that it was the one-eyed devil, the Dajjal, that is mentioned in the ahadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that has been predicted by the Prophet, peace be upon him. But today we are using these things without any reservation, and not only using these things, but today we are using, for example, television or internet. Things like these we are using for the sake of, for the purpose of Islam, to spread the message of Islam. It is because of the fact that earlier when we made opinion about these things, we didn't do so by following the Quranic principle that do not follow that of which you have no knowledge. We didn't acquire right understanding and right knowledge about these things. Therefore, we declare them bad or prohibited. Now, with the passage of time, when we came to realize they have beneficial dimensions, beneficial aspects as well, then we started using those things even for the Islamic objectives. So the second point that I would love to emphasize in the context of this verse is that many a times we follow party lines, we follow ideological persuasions, we follow organizations, even without acquiring sound understanding and sound knowledge about these. Now, this is quite tragic for we Muslims, because we are told that you should pursue and follow only those things of which you have understanding. And now, we not only get divided into different sects, different groups and organizations, antagonistic sects and organizations. What essentially happens is our collective energies are dissipated. Those energies which should have been directed at achieving the objectives that Islam has set forward for we people, like serving the humanity, spreading the light of knowledge, helping people out from their miseries and difficulties. Instead of focusing on these things, our energies get dissipated because of infighting. That is fundamentally, essentially a problem that emerges when we do not follow this very principle of the glorious Quran. The third thing that we need to keep in our mind in the context of this verse relates with non-Muslims. So when it comes to non-Muslims like the Hindus, the Jews, the Christians, or the Buddhists, the Jainas, or atheists and other groups of people in the world, we usually form opinion about these groups without acquiring sound understanding and sound knowledge. And when we form opinion about these people, these groups and these communities without necessary and sufficient information about them, then our decisions and our opinions are going to go wrong. So what happens is that we end up forming wrong opinions about different communities. Now it is a matter of interface and interaction between Muslims and rest of the communities, Muslims and the rest of the world. And if we construct this interface and interact to space wrongly, then it is going to make huge impacts on not only Muslims but rest of the world as well. Therefore, it is important for we people that we should impartially, on the basis of sound understanding, form opinions about different groups that live besides we people or with we people on this planet, on this globe. The fourth lesson that we derive from this verse of the glorious Quran is that in case I don't know about an issue, and it would by default be majority of the cases, because there are virtually endless number of issues around, and I can't study each and every issue with a detail which gives me the sort of guarantee and authority to take position. And therefore what I need to do is that in case I don't know about issues, I should remain silent. I should learn to say I don't know. Our earlier scholars, our predecessors, they would say, as Imam Darimi mentions in his Sunan work on Ahadith, they would say that La adri nisful ilm, that is to say, I don't know, it is half the knowledge. Unfortunately, today we have given up this very tradition. We feel ashamed to say I don't know. Every person seems to be in a mood of giving answers, taking positions, and by default, by the very nature of the vastness of the number of problems that are around us, issues that are around us, it is not possible that I can know each and every issue. And by default, I should have been saying I don't know. But today, by default, we respond by taking positions, and it is a tragic phenomenon in modern times. Now, when we take positions without having sufficient knowledge about things, we trap ourselves in a very uncomfortable situation. Because as time moves ahead, the situation proves us wrong, then it becomes difficult for us to accept that we were wrong at one point of time. And our ego is hurt, and then rest of the things happen with we people, which make us, at the end of the day, bad scholars, which make us bad students and bad people. Therefore, this verse teaches us that we should learn to know I don't know. The last and the final thing that we learn from this verse is that If all of us follow this tradition, all of us follow this very principle that we'll be talking only about those things about which we have knowledge, we will take positions only on those issues where we have done some research. If we all follow this very principle, then our society is going to get transformed into a knowledge society. We will become a knowledge society, knowledgeable society, where the tradition of knowledge is deeply rooted within us. And all of us will end up being students. And it is always beautiful to be a student. As this Quranic verse demands from us that La taqfu ma laysa laka bihi ilm, do not follow that of which you have no knowledge. Therefore, a Muslim has to be dynamically, consistently, without a respite, he has to be a student in the process of knowing about things which he is about to say or which he is about to take as his course of action. These are the 5 things that we learn from this verse. There could be many more lessons that we can learn from this verse, but for the sake of brevity of the lecture, I restrict myself to these 5 things. I hope that we learn something important from this beautiful verse of Surah Al-Isra, chapter 17, verse 36. Do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. أقول هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم.